Hello and welcome to the channel, or welcome back if you've been here before. Quick thank you to all those that are liking and subscribing. Many thanks, and to anyone who's been putting some comments in there as well. I do reply to the comments, so thank you for doing that. Today's video, the death of Britpop. So a look back at really where the scene kind of petered out, for want of a better word. So who killed Britpop? Is anyone to blame? Let's have a little think about it. First video I did on the Britpop scene was the golden period of 94 to 96. And I think it is fair to say that was when everything was on its height, which really goes from the release of Park Life and His and Hers through to Oasis at Nebworth. And we're going to look at now what kind of came through next in the next couple of years. So, and just concentrating on the big four, which would be, well, for those who don't know, you're going to find out. So, yes, we're going to look at the big four albums and really the impact that they had. And if there is anything that went wrong, we'll see that is the case. So Britpop, the second wave of Britpop bands that came through in 97. I personally felt a few of them were a little bit contrived is the word. Whether you like them or not, they didn't feel particularly genuine. I think the record companies went round various pubs in London and basically gathered good-looking young men up and said, you look like you should be in a band, here's a load of money, go and make an album. So I think there was an air that these bands hadn't paid the dues. So I'm talking probably Menswear are the big example. I know there are people out there who love that album and that band. Personally, I've got it, but for me there was something a little bit fake, less than genuine is probably the kindest thing I can say. It felt like it had been put together a bit like a boy band, really. Northern Uproar were another one who I didn't think much of. So so that for me was the first signs that the newer bands coming through were not of the calibre of the original kind of crew, which I think were bands that were going and kind of got swept up in the scene rather than being kind of created for the scene. What else was going on around this time? Well, obviously the Spice Girls had turned up, so pop was back, and when the girl bands came through, we also had the rise of the second wave of boy bands after Take That. So you had your Westlifes and your Boyzones, and of course by the end of the decade, the dreaded pop idol was looming in the shadows, and that really was the death of all guitar kind of bands really for quite some time. And it's weird talking about this now when we've got what's going on in the UK at the moment with the Oasis reunion. So next year's going to be massive, isn't it, for them? Potentially a new album as well. Blur have just done an album last year and sold out a lot of big concerts. Suede are back and are at the top of their game again, and I understand Pulp are also coming back. So the big four are all still around. But there was a period where they were almost forgotten about. And the thing for me, as I was getting towards that decade and I was approaching the big 3-0, the nightclubs and things was in, the music soundtrack that I loved for quite some time started to change. And we got things like new metal cropping up on the dance floor, the dreaded Limp Bizkit. Anybody remember them? That kind of stuff suddenly became popular. The kids weren't coming in Fred Perry. They were coming in looking like they were going to go and fix your car with baseball caps on backwards and shorts and that type of stuff. So I all of a sudden felt instantly too old to be in there, and that's probably where I started to check out of that. You have to do it eventually, don't you? But before I checked out, there were a couple of years left of still some good music, but is it Britpop? And did it have the impact that original stuff did? So fresh off the battle of the 1995, where they got a bit of a bloody nose, really, didn't they? So we'll go with the first sign that all was not well is this album from Blur. So this is the equivalent of really, if you're 4-0 down at half time, taking the ball home and going home, isn't it? This is the Blur album that basically went, we are nothing to do with Britpop really anymore. Look at the cover, they're somewhere in Iceland, aren't they? In the Mist. They've took the ball home. They've had enough. They're not playing anymore. So and I think a wise move, because I think for Damon Albarn, he didn't deliver the goods with The Great Escape. They may have won the battle of the singles, but they certainly lost the war of the albums. Oasis became all conquering and went on to Nebworth and had some success in America. And Blur for a little time were you know, on the back foot a little bit. And obviously eventually the path to the Gorillaz is starting to be signposted on this album. And I do think this album, and in particular the one that followed it, have lasted well. I really like 13. That's an album I play quite a bit. This is a decent album. It's not their best album. It's certainly not a classic, but it's a move in the right direction, and very cleverly looking to do something new. There are some great tracks on here. Obviously, Beetlebum is the one we all know as the #1 single. Death of a Party is a really, really good song. Strange News from Another Star. So, really good album. And of course, it does contain the Woohoo song, which is a song that could be less Britpop. Probably that one, isn't it, really? But the influence of bands like Pavement came through on this one. But it's a good album. It ain't Britpop, though, is it? But this is the first sign that the party was over, and actually there is a song on here called Death of a Party, isn't there? So, yeah, good album, but it's certainly not Park Life, is it? Or Modern Life is rubbish, for that matter. So, yeah, so Blur started to kind of move away from the scene. The Gallaghers tried to keep the party going, didn't they, into 1997. So on August the 21st, 1997, the third Oasis album, Be Here Now, was released. And at the time, the biggest selling album in the UK, I think, in terms of pre-ordering. Now, it's interesting, in the pre-internet days, when this came out, you couldn't pre-order. You go to your local record shop and say, could you save me one when you get them in? And I remember the hype around this album was so high that everyone thought that they might actually sell out of copies of this. So I remember, I think HMV opened at midnight to sell it, a bit like they did with the Harry Potter books as that in that decade. My local record shop opened at 8 o'clock in the morning so that people on the way to work could stop off and get one. And this is the one and only time in my 35-year career at work that my boss actually gave me the morning to go and pick my CD copy of this album up, on the proviso that I got him one too. He did give me the money. And then when word went round where I worked that I'd got the morning to go and stop off and get this, I think picked up 6 CD copies from my local shop, so he was very happy, for all the people in the office who all wanted the album, and they weren't particularly Oasis fans. So I think this is the album that everyone who hadn't been on board for the first two dived into this one, which is why it sold so many. And unfortunately, within a month or so, some of the flaws of this album started to kind of get whispered about in it. I do remember Q Magazine give this a 5 out of 5 and said it was an absolute masterpiece, whereas they'd given Morning Glory a 3 out of 5 saying it was rubbish. And both reviews are wrong. Morning Glory isn't rubbish, but it isn't a 5 out of 5, and this certainly isn't a 5 out of 5. But the flaws on this album, I think, it's all to do, if you look at the length of the tracks, there's only, I think, one song under 5 minutes, which is Don't Go Away. All of the others are 6, 7, and in some cases 9 minutes long, and it's just way too long. I listened to this the other day on CD, and it's nearly 80 minutes. It's just, every track goes on too long. One song justifies it, which is the opening song and first single, in Do You Know What I Mean, which is a fabulous track, and that deserves that kind of epic, kind of Zeppelin kind of production. But the rest of them certainly don't. And the second single, Stand By Me, for me was the first Oasis single I thought shouldn't have been a single, because it's just too long. It's ironic, it's gone on to become this anthem now, because in the UK it's used a lot on TV adverts, but that's like 30 seconds of it. The album version and the single goes on for 6 minutes, and it's just way too long. And every track suffers from that. There's some rock tracks in terms of Be Here Now, and It's Getting Better, Man. Just too long, you know. Some of these were debuted at Nebworth, and they were 4 minutes at Nebworth. By the time they got recorded, they were 6 minutes. My Big Mouth, it could have been a great song, but it's a bit of a mess on here. and I think the production is the big issue. It's over bloated. They went slightly bonkers, I think, in the studio, and I think the certain chemical influences were to blame, and it's a glorious mess, but it is a bit of a mess of an album. For the 25th anniversary, Noel remixed, you know what I mean, or rethought it. I think it's called the Rethink mix, and that's far better. If you can get a chance to listen to that, it's well worth checking out. But sadly, the rest of the album, bit of a bloaty mess. There are some nice songs in there. The Girl in the Dirty Shirt's a nice track. Ironically for me, the best two tracks from this era of Oasis was Stay Young and Going Nowhere, which were B-sides, as is ever the case with Oasis at that time. And I know Noel has gone on record saying if he'd have held over some of the stronger material for this album, it would have been a far better album. But it is what it is. The 25th anniversary CD edition with the extra disc does have some songs that would unreleased and are quite interesting. Yeah, but a glorious mess that was Oasis. That's 1997. So around this time, the big albums were things like Radiohead's OK Computer, The Verve's Urban Hymns, Spiritualized did a great one in Ladies and Gentlemen, We're Floating in Space. But then they're not at all Britpoppy, are they? So by 1998, the dawn is well and truly dawning. That all is not well, because here come Pulp. So the innocence that was around on those kind of initial 90s Pulp albums, like the intro album and His and Hers, that can carried on into Common People and into the Different Class album. By the time we get to This Is Hardcore, Jarvis is feeling his age, I think, on this one, and he can see that he can't carry on that kind of champagne cocaine lifestyle. I think there's a song that didn't make the album, the Champagne Socialist one, that it sums up exactly where he was, the New Labour kind of era. I think he became very disillusioned. There is the odd light song on here. The second track, Dishes, is a brilliant song. You know, I think it says, I don't know Jesus Christ, but we share the same initials. So there's a lightness, a touch there, but the rest of the album is dark, and it's wrapped up in the pulp kind of sound, but the lyrical content, and there's a decadence to this album. Obviously, the title track, This Is Hardcore, sums it up. It's no common people, is it? It's a masterpiece song. I think that's one of the best things that Pulp did, and I think this album is particularly good. But cat interruption. But yes, This Is Hardcore, great album. If you haven't heard this is one of the last truly kind of essential, for me, Britpop songs. But you look at the track days, it get track listing at the end, Glory Days and The Day After the Revolution. It's kind of all pointing to that all is not well. The singles, Help the Aged, that's a really great song. But Paul Jarvis, you can almost tell by then he was considerably older than a lot of his contemporaries at that time, and you can feel that he's just ready to kind of chuck it all in and move to France, which is what I think he did. Party Hard, there's the innocence has gone, hasn't it? So from the cover onwards, you can tell that this is the end of a scene, and that's Pulp almost checking out. They did do, I think, We Love Life after this album, but by then the writing was on the wall for that great band. And then another one came through in 1999, and this is kind of a fitting end, really, to Britpop, that all is not well in Swadeland. So the band that were one of the first to kind of kickstart that scene, by the time we get to Head Music in 1999, there's a hollowness, and the quality control starting to go. Brett's book goes into this period, his second book, Afternoons with the Blinds Drawn, as to where things are going wrong. I think he basically decided he didn't want his guitar player to have any part in this album, and I think it's something he's apologised for and regretted. But Suede try and do kind of a Britpop Prince type album. Savoir Faire, the second track, She's Creeping About the House, Quiet as a Mouse kind of song. The lyrics are half kind of thought out. There's a song called Elephant Man on here, which is really poor. but there are some good stuff. There's a song on here I think called Down, which kind of shows you where it's gone. A couple of the singles are good, She's in Fashion and Everything Will Flow. And the B-sides were pretty good as ever with Suede. There's a song called Crackhead on here. That this is the posh version with an extra disc of B-sides, but and that kind of that title tells you what was going on with Suede. And sadly, this looked like the band were petering out. The album that came out after this, A New Morning, completely bombed, and they had terrible trouble in the recording of that. I think they got through about 8 different producers, and it's not a great album. But interestingly enough, all of these bands, the big four, have come back, and in 2024 are probably more relevant now than they were in 1999. The thing that I knew all was not well in Britpop land was when Suede and Pulp released best of albums, and they barely scraped the top 100, and you kind of knew then that all was going away. I think Oasis managed to struggle on, but ironically splitting up was possibly the best thing they've ever did, because I think it's made people appreciate them far more now than we did in 2009. And as I've said before, Liam Gallagher with his solo career has done an awful lot to reinvigorate that kind of brand. But yes, so the end of an era, the death of a party. Britpop kind of fell apart, it petered out, but in 2024, Suede have done Auto Fiction a couple of years ago and are absolutely on fire. Blur did their last album, which is the best thing they've done since they've come back. Pulp allegedly are doing a new album. Oasis have just sold millions of tickets in seconds. And by all accounts, there is going to be an album to go with the tour. So it's all kind of good stuff. My favourite of the final kind of Britpop albums is this one. I think it's an absolute masterpiece of an album from Jarvis and the Boys. And I'm going to go and have a listen to this afterwards now. But again, if you've enjoyed that video, please like and subscribe. Next month on this month on the channel, I'll finish my 90s stuff, but they will return. But I'm going to have a look at something from Ireland, because I've come back from Northern Ireland recently. And a little look at some of my favourite acts from the Emerald Isle. And yeah, so thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed that, please like and subscribe. Let me know in the comments your thoughts on Britpop and your memories of that. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll hopefully see you on the next one.